That's when my life turned around. Big time. Big time.
Rosie, how's my precious? Rosie, how's my girl? Huh? How's your udder doing, Rosie? Oh, you getting an extra treat? Got your hay, huh? Alrighty. Break it apart, little. There you go. There you go, girls. There you go. Good girl, Garland. Good girl. This girl here is Rosie. And Rosie was used as a dairy production cow for about 5 or 6 years until she developed mastitis so severe. About half of the herds now in dairy production have chronic mastitis problems because they're forced to produce 10 times more milk than they would in nature. Rosie will always have a very large udder. At times it flares up and becomes infected. Had she, of course, not been rescued, she would have long ago been sent to the slaughterhouse, which is ultimately where all dairy cows go. They're not being retired to the green pastures. They are going to slaughterhouse. And in fact, dairy cows are what are used for hamburger in this country.
By and large, he's lived his whole life here. His mom was pregnant when they rescued her, and being a male, he would have been taken away and put into veal. You've got to keep a dairy cow pregnant to have her produce milk. She can't lactate unless she's pregnant. So as soon as she has her calf, you take the calf away because you need the milk for production, but the calf ends up as part of a veal. The veal industry exists because of the dairy industry. It's a byproduct of it. And the thing is there's some cases where those mothers will go dry for a while. They'll quit producing milk because they are in mourning for their calf. I have witnessed cows when the calves died on the farm. It amazed me that they could go for days just lowing and bawling and stuff for their calf. And they usually won't eat and they won't drink, and they will stay there until you bury it. The other cows would be supportive. They would walk with her, they would try to keep her with them. And why would, they do that? It's because they care about their own. And grieving, we kind of attribute that to us, to humans. We think we're unique because we can reason, we're rational, and we're also emotional. But cows are emotional too. I mean, they grieve. I've watched them grieve for their calves. I've watched them grieve for members of their herd that have been lost. There's a very strong bond. They have their own community.
Separate ways, my mother and me. Catch me 'cause I'm falling out of my family tree.
They're kept in the dark in veal crates, and They're tethered at the neck so that they can't turn around, can't move. They're given a diet that's devoid of iron. And so there's a lack of exercise. They're kept anemic, so it keeps the meat white. And then when they're a little bit bigger, then they're sent to slaughter. A lot of times they can't even walk when they're taken out of the crates because they're so anemic. They've never had any exercise or anything, and they have to be dragged out.
falling through all the branches, don't know where I'll land, picking up all the pieces, just might need a hand. Now we've gone our separate ways. My brother and me, catch me 'cause I'm falling out of my family tree.
Moo! Moo! Hi there. How's everything in Bovineville? Huh? Should we get together and talk? Huh?
My name is Howard Lyman. I'm a fourth-generation farmer, rancher, feedlot operator. And I travel around the world about 11 out of 12 months of the year, and I talk to people about the proper amount of animal products to have in their diet as being zero. People look at me and say, wait a minute, fourth-generation farmer, rancher, feedlot operator, talking about not eating animal products? You gotta be smoking the #1 crop out of California. Ever since I was a small boy, I always had the greatest love in the world of the land, of the animals, to get up in the morning and the dew on the grass and to hear the birds singing. I thought it was the Garden of Eden, and the only thing I ever wanted to be in my entire life was a farmer. But I graduated from high school, and lo and behold, I found the farm was a business to be run, and I didn't have the tools to run a business. And so I decided to go to Montana State University and become an agribusinessman. 4 years of college, I learned a thing called better living through chemistry. And I went home and I took a small farm, an organic farm, and over a period of years I turned it into an operation where I had 7,000 head of cattle, 12,000 acres of crop, 30 employees. We'd bring the animals in and we'd put them in the chute. We'd give them 7 to 21 vaccines, cut off their horns, castrate them, inject them with hormones, put them out into a pen and give them feed laced with antibiotics, because if you didn't give them antibiotics every day, you'd end up with a lot of sick and dead animals. On our feedlot, I've seen the flies so bad that you could reach out and grab them and end up with a handful of them. And so we would get up early in the morning when there was dew in the air, and we'd take a fogger with insecticides and drive up and down the feed alleys with a great fog of insecticide that would go out and it would drift over the cattle and over the water troughs and over the bunks. 2 hours later, we'd fill those feed bunks up. Cattle would go, eat them, lick the troughs, go to the water troughs and drink them. These were the things that I learned at Montana State University. These are the things that I thought were correct. But in the back of my mind, I kept seeing the birds die, the trees die, the soil change, And I couldn't bring myself to believe that even though I was buying hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of chemicals, that I was responsible. And you know, my brother died 29 years old. I believe today he died from the chemicals we were using on that farm. And it was not until 1979, at the time when I was at the top of my game, that I ended up paralyzed from the waist down. Now, it takes quite a rap on the head to get your attention, and I'll tell you, to be paralyzed from the waist down, that gets your attention. And here I am in the hospital where the doctor's telling me I've got 1 chance in a million I'll ever walk again if this tumor is on the inside of the cord.
There was a down cow left in the parking lot at the stockyard, and over the course of the day I went to other slaughterhouses in the area and did more videotaping, but I couldn't get the image of this cow out of my mind. So I went back at about 10 o'clock at night and called the police and said, you know, here's an animal that's obviously suffering, and she's been there at least 6 hours that I know of, probably been there a lot longer than that. And shouldn't she just be euthanized or provided veterinary care or something? And the cop told me there was nothing he could do. A downed animal at a stockyard could sell for as little as $1. And when that's the case, anything goes.
Went into the operating room and they operated on me for 12 hours. Took a tumor out the size of my thumb. I walked down to the hospital with a 1 in a million operation.
This footage came from a guy who actually worked at this slaughterhouse, and he was bothered by what he was seeing, and one day he actually went out there with a video camera and videotaped. This is an alleyway where there are probably over a dozen down cows just stacked on top of each other. This video footage was taken over the weekend, so these animals are just being left to linger.
You have to remember that I'd just been given the greatest gift in the world, the gift to walk again. And I can remember on my farm, shortly after the operation, I was in the bathroom and I was looking in the mirror. And it was one of the first times in my life that I actually got honest with myself. My entire life, I've always claimed to love animals. And I asked myself at that time, if I really love animals, if I care about them as much as I profess to, should I be eating them? I never saw an animal clicking its heels and going to the kill floor saying, "Yippee skippy, I want to be a burger tomorrow." I've been in hundreds of slaughterhouses. I've seen thousands of animals die. I knew, looking at those animals, they knew they were going to die. They saw what happened to the animal in front of them. They smelled the death that is there. Is there a need for that? I saw the fear in those animals' eyes, but I never allowed myself to really think about it until after I walked out of the hospital. And I will tell you that when I asked myself that question, I almost tore the sink off of the wall. I couldn't go and discuss it with my wife. How was I going to tell my wife that we had millions of dollars invested in an operation that was designed around feeding and killing animals? How was I going to say to her, maybe what we ought to do is get out of this business? How was I going to go and talk to my friends about it where every one of them was involved in doing exactly what I was doing? There was no support mechanism. Even if I went to my minister, here was a man that was eating animals just like I was. It was the most lonely, difficult time in my entire life.
They're beautiful. I need people over here, please. Because we're going to make a human chain with snow fencing. And we're going to just herd them in this way. Because if I go in there, they're very, 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 very skittish of people. So if you guys could just take this all the way along the truck, so the chickens can't. Good job, good job, good job. Excellent. And really all we'll need to block off even is just that area. Perfect. They're so, I mean, they're beyond even, they're almost skittish. Okay, now what I'm going to do is go in on the other side and then start shooting them out.
Some of them got some color.
Yeah, these weren't in the cages that long, which is why they have feathers still. All of these birds came from one of the largest egg factory farms in the country. There are about a dozen or maybe up to 20 warehouses filled with approximately 100,000 birds in each warehouse, raised in the typical egg factory farm system. And the tornado hit in this area, and the buildings are basically partially demolished or fully demolished. And yet, there are still rows and rows and rows of cages with tens of thousands of birds still alive, without food or water, exposed without, of course, any shelter, any housing. And the cages are, in some cases, they're like twisted up, and the birds are, literally hanging almost like upside down and completely twisted. Other cages are just like caved in, and there's still birds trapped at the bottom. And it's, they've been in there like that now for, 6 days. These animals aren't worth anything at this point anymore. Apparently they must not